clear if I'm doing the same. You good?
To call this Wednesday, May the 25th, Planning Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Amanda Jackson Denmark.
Here.
Commissioner Charlie Whitmore.
Here.
Commissioner Kathleen Duncan.
Here.
Commissioner Rich Delcor. Commissioner Jason Stewart.
Here.
Commissioner Jim Flynn.
Here.
Commissioner Lydia DePaul.
Here. Notice regarding adjournment. The Planning Commission will not hear new items after 9:30 p.m. unless authorized by a majority vote of the commission members. Items which have not been heard before 9:30 may be continued to the next regular meeting or an additional meeting date as determined by the commission members. Notice regarding public comments. Every member of the public who is recognized to speak shall address the chairman and in speaking avoid disrespect to the board and commissioners, town staff, and other members that are speaking. State your name and address when speaking for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. May I have an adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. How about the adoption of the minutes from last meeting? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Public comments. For those of you who have comments pertaining to an agenda item before the commission this evening, you will have the opportunity to comment before the commission votes on the item. You're welcome to hold your comments until then or voice your comment at this time. Do we have any public comment at this time?
You do.
Are they regarding this topic?
One is.
Whoever that is, do they want to speak now or wait until?
You want to speak now? Or?
Cool.
Good evening. My name is Jim Cuff. I live in Island West, and I just want to address a couple of questions. Most of the questions I had were answered by. I was waiting for an answer from Kim Jones. I'm not sure which way the water runoff for that proposed development is going. I see the lagoon, but I don't see which way the water runoff is going. The reason why we asked the question is that area, most of the runoff comes through Island West. If you look at all the development on Buckwalter, that still all comes through Island West and exits at what they call Upper T East. So we're concerned about, if we're going to be seeing more water. The other one is on the commercial side of the property, and my understanding is not going to be developed for about until their parts phase 2 and 3. They're going to do one first, but the commercial property backs up to a couple of homeowners. I know there's going to be a 50-foot buffer, but we would request that they put in a privacy fence and some sort of, because normally on commercial property they have dumpsters and everything, behind the buildings, and that makes for a lot of noise. So we'd like to request fencing and everything that's, blocking out the homes there.
Thank you.
That's it.
Is there someone else that wanted to speak now or wait?
Can I do mine now? Because it's more generic. It's not really to you.
That's fine. That's what I'm. That's fine.
Okay.
And Madam Chairwoman, if we could just make sure that anybody who has public comment states their name and address just for our records.
And address. Okay. My name is Carol Crutchfield, and I am the Director of Facilities Planning and Construction with the Beaufort County School District. So my address is 2900 Mink Point Boulevard, Beaufort, South Carolina. Anyway, and I'm here on behalf of the administrative staff to speak about any new projects that create residential housing. Today, there are 6 schools out of the 11 in Bluffton that are currently over capacity. The remaining 5 schools are heading towards being at or over their programmatic capacity. At this time, the Beaufort County School District does not have the funding to address the capacity problems in Bluffton. The Beaufort County School District does not have the ability to support any new residential development that could increase the number of school-aged children in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any old business? Oh. Oh. Okay. Well, then we'll have one more public comment.
Yes, my name is Scott Crosby. I live at 12 Pepper Hall Plantation Drive, which my property is involved with the intersection that's being redone right now. I'm directly across the road from this proposed development. I don't know if you're aware of the 850 homes that are already proposed for that intersection, which is the reason why it's being redone right now. But y'all are talking about having 1,000 homes plus commercial space being tied into one intersection. And I understand there's going to be a back entrance to it as well. But I couldn't even get here in time just because of all the traffic at 170 and 278, which is less than a quarter of a mile from this intersection. I think y'all really need to put a lot of thought into how y'all are going to plan how people are going to get in and out of here, the dangers involved in it, not to mention the fact that it's less than a quarter of a mile from the headwaters of the Oconee River. Beaufort County's done a horrible job of managing the water runoff on the Graves project that's next door to me. Hopefully y'all will do a better job of that with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any old business? No. New business. The Headwaters at Bluffton. A request by Nathan Long of Thomas and Hutton on behalf of Southeastern Development Associates for approval of a master plan amendment. The amendment will replace the current master plan layout with a mixed-use development to include up to 270 multifamily units. The phased construction of the relocated Hampton Parkway as approximately 16.1 acres of commercial outparcels located along the realigned Hampton Parkway. Dan, would you like to present?
This is a master plan amendment for Headwaters at Bluffton. Very good. Got it figured out already. This is an aerial showing the location of the property, and we're bounded to the property's bounded to the west by Beaufort County-owned property that's within the Buckwalter PUD, to the south and to the east by the Island West Development and Golf Club. To the north, it's bounded by US 278, which is Ford Island Road. And above that, the property that's on the opposite side of US 278 is within unincorporated Beaufort County. The requested change, this application is prepared by Thomas and Hutton for the applicant, Southeastern Development Associates, with authorization of the property owner, HTP Bluffton. And they're requesting approval for an amendment to the master plan for Buckwalter Commons Hampton Parkway at Highway 278, located in the Buckwalter Plan Unit Development. There'll be a rename with this master plan. It'll be referred to as Headwaters at Bluffton. More specifically, the amendment includes amending the currently approved master plan that consists of a major grocery anchor supporting commercial development and additional general commercial outparcels with a mixed-use development to include up to 270 multifamily units, the phased construction of the relocated Hampton Parkway, as well as several commercial outparcels located along the realigned Hampton Parkway. To the left is a graphic showing the currently approved master plan, and to the right is the proposed master plan. This is the current existing master plan. Here is the Harris Teeter, labeled Harris Teeter, but it's a major grocery store with adjoining commercial and outparcels along the frontage and outparcels here. This constitutes phase one of the currently approved master plan. This is the proposed master plan. I've rotated it so to the right is your north, so it matches up with the current master plan. And I was able to bring it up bigger on the screen. It's a mixed-use development, including up to 270 multifamily units. As I referenced, there's a 15-foot buffer along the west property line and a 50-foot buffer shown along the south property line and the east property line. To the north is also a 50-foot buffer. This is also within 500 feet. Any development within 500 feet of Highway 278 is subject to the highway corridor overlay. It requires a certificate of appropriateness for that. The multifamily development is proposed to have 2 access points. We will show them here. One to the north that would get out onto 278. This is existing access to 278 right here. So this would be 1 access point. A second, and this is a gated access point with a gate here and a gate here. The second access point would be to the south. And this is an emergency access only. It's being proposed to be a gravel drive that gets out to Hampton Parkway. This would not allow residents out. It's actually for emergency vehicles in only. Let me move on to the phasing plan. The phasing plan, phase 1 would be the multifamily development and 2 commercial properties and the infrastructure that supports both of them. So that's multifamily development here, commercial at this corner, and commercial here. The second phase would include an expansion of Hampton Parkway access drive by 500 feet and bring in additional commercial development. So that would be phase 2 here, expanding the Hampton Parkway drive across the front of it and bringing in the commercial development that's here. Phase 3 would be the remaining commercial outparcels and completion of the Hampton Parkway. So that would include all of the commercial that runs along the south side of proposed Hampton Parkway extension, and also brings in this commercial piece right here. This is the proposed tree plan. It should be noted that the applicant revised the original tree plan, and this one does a little bit better job of saving significant trees. They submitted a tree analysis with this application that identified and analyzed all of the trees within the phase 1 development. I believe the scope of it was just the multifamily development here. As currently proposed by the applicant, phase 1 of the currently proposed master plan amendment identifies the southern point of access to the proposed multifamily development as emergency gated access only, and it will connect with the existing Hampton Parkway via gravel secondary emergency access only. So as I stated earlier, residents wouldn't be able to come in and out of this. This would be emergency gated only, so a second access point for emergency vehicles only. Staff has a recommendation to update the plan and the narrative to upgrade the southern access from gravel emergency access to paved full access designed to the standards of the Beaufort County Zoning and Development Standards Ordinance 90/3. So in other words, our recommendation is to fully build this section up to the southernmost access point. As currently proposed, the phase 1 multifamily development provides only 1 sidewalk connection from the development to the future Hampton Parkway. That sidewalk connection is at the southern section. What staff is recommending is update the plan and narrative to show a northern, central, and southern sidewalk connection. Got arrows shown on the screen approximately where the best locations would be to tie into the sidewalk that will be running along Hampton Parkway. Review criteria. This is comes out of section 3.9.3B. The 2 highlighted sections, 393C and 393G, are 2 that staff has said are not being met. 393C, the finding is the request is not consistent with the Town of Bluffton zoning development ordinance that applies to the Buckwalter PUD. The plan and narrative need to be updated to upgrade the southern access from gravel emergency access to paved full access designed to the standards of Beaufort County Zoning Development Standards Ordinance 90/3. And section 393G, demonstration of innovative site planning techniques that improve upon the standards in other allowable Town of Bluffton zoning districts with the purpose of enhancing the Town of Bluffton's health, safety, and welfare. The finding is the plan does not include innovative site planning techniques that enhance the town's health, safety, and welfare. Same first comment, which is the plan and narrative need to be updated regarding the southern access. In addition, update the plan and narrative to show a northern, central, and southern sidewalk connection from the multifamily development to the future Hampton Parkway. This is a table of the review process. Step 1 was the application check-in that occurred on March 11, 2021. Step 2 is review by the Development Review Committee that occurred on December 8th of 2021. Step 3 is the Planning Commission public hearing recommendation. That's tonight, May 25th. And then step 4 would be you're making a recommendation to Town Council, and Town Council is the approving authority, and that date is to be determined. Planning Commission actions for consideration is recommendation of approval of the application as submitted by the applicant, recommendation of approval of the application with conditions, or recommend denial of the application as submitted by the applicant. Town staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Town staff finds that the requirements of section 393 of the UDO can be met with the following conditions and recommends that the Planning Commission provide a recommendation of conditional approval to Town Council for the Headwaters at Bluffton Master Plan Amendment. And there's 4 conditions as follows. Update the plan and narrative to upgrade the southern access from gravel emergency access to paved full access designed to the standards of Beaufort County Zoning and Development Standards Ordinance 90/3. 2 is update the plan and narrative to show a northern, central, and southern sidewalk connection from the multifamily development to the future Hampton Parkway. 3 is provide a second dumpster location to serve the needs of residents located in the southern half of the multifamily development. Should have pointed it out, and I can bring it up on the screen, but they're only providing 1 dumpster location at the very northern side of the multifamily development. Our recommendation is to site a second one that would serve the needs of the residents on the southern half. And number 4, they submitted a traffic impact analysis with this application. We're asking that it gets updated, that a traffic impact analysis shall be provided prior to submitting development plans for phases 2 and 3. So update the traffic analysis when phase 2 comes in and when phase 3 comes in. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
Can you go back to the first page that was highlighted for a second? I didn't read that second one. I apologize.
Go back to here?
No, keep going back to where you had the highlighted lines. There were 3
I'm sorry.
pages highlighted, so that very first one. So keep going. One more.
Oh, okay.
There.
I'm sorry.
Hang on. I just wanted to read them both real quick.
In the meantime, does the applicant want to say anything about the project?
Yes.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. You're welcome.
What does that do? Or if you could just go back to the master plan, I think that would be good. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name's Nathan Long. I'm with Thomas and Hutton. I've also got Mark Sin and John Lee here, who are with Southeastern Development Associates. I think y'all are familiar with this developer. They've done a few projects in the town of Bluffton. They actually worked on the Kroger Supercenter there in Buckwalter Place, and they also did One Hampton Lake Apartments. So I think that both of those projects speak to the quality of this developer. We've been working with town staff now probably about 8 months on the plan. As Dan mentioned, we've made some revisions, looking at trees, revising some of our parking. We're fine with all the conditions that the town proposed, or staff proposed. We did want to address a couple of those, so I'll just kind of go through those one by one. On the first one, updating the gravel access from being EMS access to a paved road, we are fine with that, and we would pave that road, and that gate would, instead of being an EMS gate, it will actually become a functioning key card gate for the residents. Upon speaking with them on that, we feel like it would be good for the residents to be able to go south as well as east-west and leaving the development. Updating the narrative for the sidewalk connections, 3 connections. Also think that's a great thing for the residents of the community and providing access to the trail. I did want to point out there's also a trail proposed through the wetland buffer there that is probably going to be more of a just a mulch path, kind of walking trail. But I did check the covenants today, and that is actually allowed in that buffer. For the second dumpster, I did want to address that a little bit. What they do is and I know we labeled it as dumpster on the master plan, but it's not a dumpster. It's a trash compactor that they size based on the number of residents. And then, like they did in One Hampton Lake, they actually have a service that's available to the residents where they will actually come get your trash and take it to the compactor. The residents also have the option to drive their own trash over or however they want to take the trash over, but the compactor is size sufficient for the development. So we would like the commission to consider removing that recommendation and just having the one trash compactor. The fourth one was the traffic impact analysis update with phases 2 and 3. That is how this was planned originally anyway. We broke the traffic study up into all 3 phases and kind of projected out which sections of the road have to be built with each phase. As you may be aware, when this was rezoned and annexed into the town, there was a 5th amendment to the development agreement and the PUD, which requires the traffic study and the road to be built to support the developments as it's proposed. So in phase 2, for instance, they would have to build additional sections of the roads for the future Hampton Parkway. And then the last thing I did want to do is revisit the buffer along the eastern side of the project. When this was originally approved in the current initial master plan that's approved with the town, the buffer was reduced from 50 feet to 25 feet along that corridor. As we went through with the town to the DRT meetings or the SRT meetings, they made the recommendation to change that to 50, which we did. And you know, as I started analyzing this a little more, I went back in and was checking those distances, and we actually have about 200 feet between the eastern edge of the right-of-way and the rear property line. And, you know, by the time you add in like a 15-foot stacking and landscape buffer adjacent to the right-of-way, your parking, 20 feet, your 24-foot drive aisle, another 20 feet of parking facing the building. Then I use just a turn-down sidewalk without even doing curb, but just where the sidewalk itself is one concrete pour. So 5 feet for that. Then you've got your 8-foot foundation plantings required adjacent to the building. Then you've got your building, and then in the rear you'd have your foundation plantings as well, and probably a 20-foot EMS access drive for fire protection. And then I left about 10 feet just to taper the grades back down. And that leaves you about 15 feet for building depth. So I do see why that was reduced, the initial time there based on the depth. When we typically plan depth of commercial parcels in vacant land, we usually do about 300 feet. And then your typical depth of this retail strip center, which is what I assume this will be due to how linear that property is, we typically use a 45 to 60 foot depth. Like if you look at Buckwalter Place, those buildings are probably 65 feet deep that kind of flank the Kroger there, just to give you an idea. So even if it was with the current 25-foot buffer, I believe we would have 40 feet of building depth, which isn't ideal, but it's doable. So I don't know exactly what I guess your buildings could be turned perpendicular to the road and have parking fields in between. But that's kind of why that was done. And then the second part was just the adjacent property is commercial. And I know there's a 50-foot PUD buffer around all of Buckwalter, which is in that text. But typically, commercial to commercial has no buffer. You've got, you know, the parking lot, and then they're parking adjacent cars there. And there is a section of Island West adjacent to this, but it's the driving range. We are planning to keep the 50-foot buffer on the southern side, which is what's adjacent to the residential homes that the gentleman mentioned. So I would like to kind of bring that back up for discussion as well with the commission. And then Mark Sin, I think, wanted to just say a few words before we address any questions. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark Sin. I'm out of Augusta, Georgia. I work
Well, part owner of Southeastern Development, and John Lee's here with me. Thanks for hearing this tonight. I appreciate you guys taking your time to do this. And you know, we've invested in Bluffton. This isn't our first time here. We've, you know, Buckwalter. We built the hospital, the cancer facility there in conjunction with the hospital. And then we built the Kroger Center retail. We also did Hampton Lakes here. As a matter of fact, in Beaufort County, I think we've invested over $300 and something million in the last 10 years in Beaufort County, because we did Shelter Cove. We redeveloped the Shelter Cove Mall. We did Water Walk there, and we also did the courtyard on Hilton Head. So the only reason I say that is because that's a lot of tax revenue for the school system, and we've added very little kids to the school system as well. So I mean, it's a lot of investment here. A lot of it, you know, even Hampton Lakes, there's not that many school-age children that live there. They're mostly 1 and 2 bedrooms. So similar to this. So I think in terms of an investment in the community, obviously we feel very good about Beaufort County. And if you look at the type projects we've done, I think we've done very quality projects that have, you know, had, you know, a very good reception in terms of awards they've won and recognition they received. So we appreciate being a part of your community. We expect to do a quality job here. You know, we certainly don't have a problem at all with I know the neighbor mentioned a fence and buffer. We'll be good neighbors. We'll do what we need to do there. That's not a problem. That's pretty standard. And hope that, you know, you guys will see fit to approve this plan. As far as the compactor goes, it is a trash compactor, and the way you do that, you just don't sit them out there like you do dumpsters and they look terrible, right? Trash compactor, you actually walk up and and you build around it a brick facility wall, so it's sheltered and hidden, and or it looks nice, at least. It doesn't look at it, because you put it in the front of your entrance, you put it in front of your gate, so you want it to be attractive. And then you walk up there and you put your trash into it, and it gets compacted there. And then it's taken out periodically, but not every night. You don't hear the banging and all that goes with dumpsters a lot of times. So I would tell you that the one compactor will be suitable. We do have a service, 6 p.m. We come by a few days a week and pick your trash up and actually take it to the dumpster, so that you don't have people driving around with trash on their cars or whatever you normally would have an image of. So it does help us, because we like to keep the facilities we have are A+, and we want to keep them attractive. And so I appreciate your time. I won't waste any more of your time tonight. If you have any questions, either John Lee or myself can answer it, and thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to the commissioners if anyone wants to start. Kathleen, do you want to start your end?
I have a couple of questions, at least to start. First question, when was the traffic impact analysis done for this project?
I believe it was, yes.
I believe it was 2021.
Okay, so
it was
relatively
right when we were submitting this, we prepared it, yes.
Does the traffic impact analysis look at how this relates to the 800 units that's going in across the street, and the influence that may also have?
No, I don't believe it. What it does is counts existing traffic. It's pretty standard format for a traffic impact analysis. I don't think it takes into account future development.
This question is probably more, this might be a Kevin Eingard question. In terms of the conversion rate of this going from commercial to multifamily, how does that work within the PUD bank?
So I'm actually going to, Mark probably can answer this a little bit better. They're not converting commercial. And if you could help assist, but I believe you have residential units and that you're just moving them from one location to another.
Correct. We have, in the Buckwalter tract, we have these 280 units, we're entitled to them. As a result of Hampton Lakes, and then we move them anywhere within the Buckwalter.
Are you using some of the 1,200 that were initially for the timeshare there?
Yes. Well, 600. There were 600.
They're being relocated.
Well, it's 600 lockouts. So
correct. Yes.
I'm counting 1,200.
Yeah, this would be the last of those.
Has the town approved that, Kevin?
So, under the development agreement, those development rights are flexible over the development area, the development agreement area. So the town has approved it because it's a by right transfer.
Within the Buckwalter PUD?
Within the Buckwalter PUD, yes, sir.
Sorry to.
Yeah, so I mean, actually, these units would go somewhere within the Buckwalter tract, and this is where we're transferring them.
And just to make sure that it's clear, they do have restricted units at Buckwalter Place.
Yes.
These are not those restricted units.
We have about 600 units there that we're not using.
Are you willing to give those up as a part of this transaction?
Well, we have nowhere to use them in Buckwalter. Where we give them up or not, it's going to be kind of meaningless.
So that's a yes.
Well, probably. I haven't thought about it, but frankly, we don't have. We don't have. Let me just put it this way: I have no more land in Buckwalter.
Yeah, but it doesn't keep somebody from coming to you in the future and trying to buy them from you. So the more we can get off the books, the better it is for keeping development.
Sure.
Down. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah. I guess the biggest thing on that is that there actually is no more land, I don't think, in that Buckwalter Place. They actually are not. That's not Buckwalter tract dedicated. That's Buckwalter Place dedicated. Okay. And there's no more land in that area.
So one question I have is the nature of those development units being timeshares before, that's clearly not students.
Well,
going to impact students. Where this, while it may not be your target audience, still could. Is there any way that, how does it?
Well, excuse me, it wasn't just for timeshare. There's 1,200 units, could have been, but there's also 600 just for multifamily. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, these have always been multifamily for up to 600 units. We use 300, a little over 300 of them at Hampton Lakes.
Kathleen, just so you know, in 2006, it was approved for 1,200 timeshare units as lockouts, so 600 units. They didn't necessarily have to be timeshares. That's what the original project was going to be. And then they ended up building just under 300 there, if I remember correctly.
Well, right at 300, 320 actually. So this is the 280 that are
so they're just under 300 still floating around. They can go anywhere else within Buckwalter by right.
Yes. And by the way, to answer your question, I don't really have a problem giving those up. We can figure a way to do that. And like I said, they're no use to me.
And those units that are associated with Buckwalter Place can't, I know you're saying they are specifically associated with Buckwalter Place, but I know that there's transfer of development rights between properties, but this is not, these are units are not transferable.
Well, they're not unless you allow them to be. Okay. I mean, as I understand, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Unless you and the council decided for some reason that you wanted to allow them to be. And then also, I think the original developer of Buckwalter Place would have to agree as well.
Okay.
Historically,
we've actually been over that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but we actually been over that with Terry and trying to look at that earlier on. And I think you would have, there's some argument there as to where that's the case, but it's part of it. So.
You good with that, Kathleen? You want to keep going, or do you want to go to a different topic?
I think my other comment, and I appreciated the explanation about the buffer, that 25-foot buffer. I am of the, I agree with staff. Well, first, I think that's outside of our purview because that falls into more of a variance request. So I don't know that that's really something that we need to be around the can in this discussion today.
Can I ask a question about that? About, I think it was discussed that the currently approved master plan does not actually have a 25-foot buffer that's approved. It was written as a proposed, which means that it wasn't actually part of the approved master plan. Is that correct?
No, based on my understanding, the approved initial master plan has a 25-foot buffer along the eastern property frontage.
It's drawn as a 50-foot.
Well, this is the proposed master plan.
No, I'm talking the old
original.
One.
Yes.
The one that we approved back in 07 is drawn as a 50-foot.
Well, I'm pretty certain the text says it's a 25-foot buffer there. I don't know.
Kevin, is there a way to figure that out? Kevin? Yes.
The question I would have is that's an exterior boundary of the PUD. Isn't that 50 by rule?
So under the development agreement and the PUD documents, yes, it's a 50-foot exterior buffer for the PUD. That is a town ordinance. and you do not have the ability to provide a variance that needs to go through the BZA or through a development agreement amendment or a PUD amendment through town council. So it may be in existence in the original master plan that was approved, but ultimately this has opened that back up. And it's staff's opinion that by opening it back up, it has to be corrected.
And I don't know that needs to be, as you, Ms. Duncan said, I don't know that needs to be discussed tonight. We can always come back. We don't even know what is going to occur on that property yet. So, it can be something later on we can take a look at.
Well, and honestly, I think that property there's flexibility in how it's developed. I mean, this isn't being defined as it's
Correct.
currently proposed. So, yes, one option is to take it and make it parallel to that road, but another is to make it parallel to 278, which changes the configuration entirely. But that's, right. Again, doesn't have to be discussed today. I will say I appreciate the statement of being flexible about adding a privacy fence along that south buffer, and I appreciate the property owner that came by that lives adjacent to requesting that. So I think that was a really great conversation piece to have. The other thing I was going to say, and I appreciate that the compactor is capable of that capacity of taking in for the entirety of the units, and I appreciate that there is a service for that. However, there's no way that we can guarantee programming as a part of this development, and so I do have concerns about people taking trash on top of their car and driving it all the way through the neighborhood. An additional concern that I have about this project, and again, I think it relates to safety, is regarding the traffic flow. So it's not just that emergency access, but it's if you're up at the north side of this property and you want to exit through the south, you're now driving through a parking lot where there could be kids running around. And I mean, I live in Bluffton Park where it's a drag strip, and this is not curvy in any way.
Well, Kathleen, they are going to gate it.
So at a couple points at the far ends, that's where you stop. But the rest of it, where you go all the way through, I can just see some kid in his little hot rod or some young 20-something drag racing through with people out there trying to get in cars. And I just worry that there's not an actual road. There's no sidewalks. There are some sidewalks around here. I take that back. But you're not following a traditional street pattern. I would much rather than going through the neighborhood, go out to this proposed road that's going to be built anyway. The configuration of this turning the way it is what to me starts kicking in this idea that it needs to be a road all the way through. I think you were talking about the traffic impact analysis is what's saying it can be phased in and it doesn't have to be. So I'm hoping maybe you can speak to how that's justified, because from my perspective, the configuration of this turning where there's this north-south major pass-through for these residents, that's to me what's more driving that need for that actual road that you can actually take.
So you're talking about the internal traffic versus the public?
Well, yeah, but even, I mean, these people will be using that road, the public road also. But yes, I'm saying that I'm talking about there's a north-south access for those residents. I would rather see them, if they're coming from the north end, to go to the south end so that they can do the east, so they can go out to Hampton Parkway. I would much rather them not go through the community.
Correct.
But go around using this public road.
So you're proposing or suggesting that they go ahead and develop that full access road?
Correct. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, that's why I want to make sure, because I was a little confused when you're in and out of the neighborhood.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so you're recommending that they should probably connect the whole thing at this time, just because of the traffic and the impact it's going to have on other people outside of this neighborhood as well.
Based off of the configuration of this proposed plan. Because
right, based off of this.
Yeah.
Does anybody else, while we're on that subject, have any comments about that particular area?
You have to ask.
Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm letting it go.
I mean, logically, it made sense with the original plan to only require the top part of that road, because the top half of the development was getting done. Now what you're proposing here is basically the left half of the development's getting done. It doesn't make sense from somebody sitting on planning commission, talking about myself, it doesn't make sense to approve this without that connector road following the edge of the property that's getting developed. And it's not just for what Kathleen was talking about with people from the north end to the south end and not running over kids, but it's also from a greater good of the plans, the town of Bluffton's master plan, and that is for interconnectivity. And we talk about traffic flow. And if we don't put that, if you don't put that middle section of that road in, Hampton Parkway in, then all the people that live on the north end of this property of the apartments are logically going to come out and dump to 278. Whereas if that connector road is done, they will think about going down to Bluffton Parkway over to your other property, over to the Kroger. Same thing for the people on the southern end. There's that interconnectivity. But what it also does is, again, this is appealing to the greater good here. There are people that live in Baynard Park and people that live in Parkside that right now have a challenge getting different ways, that when this road is completed, as has been planned all along, it makes traffic flow easier for everybody in the area. So, you know, when it gets time for us doing the recommendation for council, I would be a big proponent of making one of the conditions completing that road as a condition of the master plan amendment, as opposed to waiting to phase 2 or 3. Those are my thoughts on it.
I agree with you. And two, just thinking about the neighboring property with Baynard Park and Parkside, they already have a really bad traffic nightmare problem when they have to get on 278. And I feel like adding all these other residents to that traffic, to that one little light, is going to be detrimental with high-speed traffic coming down 278. So all those people from Baynard Park and Parkside are going to have to try and get to that light, but then have to make a U-turn where y'all's entrance is, basically. So they already struggle. I just think it's going to cause a little bit more of a traffic problem at that intersection. So that's my 2 cents.
I agree strongly on that, because your proposed plan originally didn't include that, and your phasing made sense. It really did when you look at it. And now you look at it, and now you're moving residential down into that area. And I know that it was originally proposed this way, but now you're asking us to make this change. And when you really look at it, it does make, you know, a significant impact on the roads in that area. And it needs to have at least the accessibility, because once the people are living there, they have to only go one way.
I also agree. I'm concerned that the units that are under development across the street haven't been considered in the traffic study, and that most of this development will need to go out onto 278. I know you had mentioned from the DRC comments about the internal parking and creating more dedicated parking spaces and roads, and how that wasn't necessarily possible because of the trees that you're trying to save. But with that said, especially without the gated entrance at the southern end, you're asking everyone to circulate essentially through a parking lot, which seems dangerous for the people inside of the community, but then also anyone that's kind of trying to get to this part of 278.
I strongly agree with everyone else that interconnectivity is key for me to be able to support this.
The through-fare road for the greater good, as you say, doesn't matter. That's a different matter. As far as the safety within the neighborhood, we do these everywhere. I mean, we've got 1,000 units under construction. And I can tell you, if we were having accidents in our parking lot or people being hit, it would be a big concern of ours. But the actual fact is, when people drive through these projects or the apartment communities like this, a lot of times they do slow down because people are moving in and out, and there are their neighbors. I mean, this is no different than you and your community. This is your neighbors. You're in there. I mean, you try to be, you know, you ride through, and it does curve. And we did look at having a through fare through there, but frankly, the amount of prime oaks that you would have to take out to do that, the more asphalt you would have didn't seem to be beneficial to the overall project. You know, we're trying to minimize the amount of asphalt, and we're trying to minimize also the impact to the natural aspects of this. We start with our design taking that into consideration first. So the first thing we did was spot all the trees. The second thing is to figure out how we can plow your new stormwater regs. And we accomplished both of those first. And then we started placing the buildings and how we set it up. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of thought that goes in with these guys and us and how to come up with a good plan that's as good as it can be on this site. We don't have problems. You know, we don't have major problems in terms of, I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you I've ever had someone that had an accident within our community. And I'll talk to John about it. We've got several thousand of these units. It's not like that. So, you know, I think actually having the parking on street sometimes slows it down. As you'll know, in good design on urban design, typically, in my background's planning, is like you have in downtown Bluffton. You have parking on the street. Why? Slowed it down. So it's very similar. So I would tell you in this case, that's not an issue. I think we know how to operate a community. We could put dumpsters out. We just don't like them. We put a dumpster at all different places here. We don't like them. But the compactor is a lot more expensive, but it looks nicer and it works better. So, you know, it's not our desire to do a dumpster type development where you have one at the back, one at the front, and everybody can walk out there and throw it in the top. Hopefully they get it in. We prefer to have a compactor.
The ratio or the percentage of homes to a compactor? How do you determine that a compactor is going to provide X? Like, I don't know, is there a formula or a percentage just so we know how that?
I mean, there is. You size it. You know, you build your size according to the community, the size, actual physical size.
Like, how big would this one be?
Yards wise, I don't know right off. I mean, I can tell you we've done them in.
It's probably like 30 by.
Only a tractor trailer.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just
yeah, I
wondering
mean,
how
they
you
unload
determine.
and load them, and of course you're compacting it, so it's not, you know, you're not taking so many trips to the landfill per se. You get a lot more in there because you are compacting it in.
What happens when that compactor is down for a couple of weeks? Then what do people do?
Fortunately, I guess we don't let them stay down for a few weeks.
But
Now, they
sometimes
will
that
be down for a
happens.
day. I mean, sometimes. I mean, you have to go in there and fix them.
Wasn't there an issue at One Hampton Lake with that?
I'm sorry, we were conversing over here.
Actually, I'm straying.
Real quick, if I may, it seems that there's you do have concerns if you were to make a condition, but actually let staff and the applicant work on providing almost like determining what is that minimum size for that compactor, just to make sure that it is sufficiently sized. You know, based off the 270 units. That's something that in between this meeting and before it going to town council, we had the ability to work on getting that information together and then presenting that to town council. So just to kind of help facilitate the conversation moving on.
Okay. You'd prefer sufficiently sized work with staff as opposed to put a second one in?
I have a
Seems
question.
like you have more.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
My question is just to ask you, can you got one total big one, whatever the size is there a possibility of putting a smaller compactor in one end of it and another one on the other end of it?
I mean, you could. I think that the difference there is, you know, you're going to have to move your gate around it because you want to put it outside the gate so they can freely get to it. And then you get into a little bit of redesign on that end of it, you know, or maybe you have to shrink the throat of that drive on that side. I don't know.
That's what I figured. I just wanted to ask.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not. I can just say it seems to have always worked for us without issues.
Yeah.
If we were issues, my property management group would call me every day, and that's not one of the issues that we typically have.
What are the
People running to the gates. Okay.
Any other discussion or comments on anything that you want to air right now, or do you want to summarize?
Yeah, two things. You said the compactor should be outside of the gate?
Yes.
It's shown inside the gate.
Well, It should be that.
It's inside the gate. It's inside the gate.
Yeah, it is.
I'm confused.
No, there
There's
are two
two gates here where
gates
you're
on either
coming in
side
the
of the
front, then you got to go
amenity
through the
There's two
gate
gates supposed
to get to the compactor.
Yeah.
Right here.
Oh,
Yeah. So here's,
That's not where it's labeled.
up right. I'm sorry.
and then there's the gate is before.
Oh, it is inside, yeah.
Yeah.
It's inside, you gotta, listen, it's inside.
Yeah.
It should, I mean, it should be. It's just hard. They can't get in there. So we need to move the gate
I
back.
just point that out, so it's something to work on. I'm not,
Yeah, we need to correct that. Thanks. But
the other question that I had was, it looks, it's 10 buildings, 270 units. Is that correct? Is that what I?
yeah, and it had to meet,
14?
there's a certain requirements that you guys have with a number of buildings and heights throughout.
Yeah.
And we had to meet all that
Okay.
within your guidelines. So each building is a little different, in the number of units. There's a.
I think it's like 70% of your buildings can be 3 stories or something like that.
Okay. So but that's the product we're essentially looking at as a 3-story building.
On some.
But we can't talk about that at the moment because we're not dealing with building types.
You actually have requirements on how many you can have in each building. You have to vary it some, so it's not all the same.
Wait, Kevin, did you want to clarify anything? I thought you were shaking your head.
Just remember that this will come back to you, both as a development plan and a certificate of readiness.
Is there a number of beds per these units that's allowed, or?
Well, they're mostly probably 2 and 1 bed and maybe some studios, but that's typically what we have. We may have a few 3 bedrooms, but not many.
Okay. And that's not really prescribed. Is with the development
It's
plan?
not a code requirement, no.
Okay.
It's just the unit, overall unit. I mean, they could do all 3 bedroom, they could do all 1 bedroom, but it's just a unit's a unit.
Okay. But even in the development plan review, there would be nothing that would, they could come in with 4-bedroom units, 5-bedroom units. None of that's regulated by the development plan process either, correct?
I mean, obviously, units and parking space requirements, so, but no, we don't regulate the number of bedrooms.
So essentially, it would be parking is would be holding them up,
Correct.
essentially.
Okay, well, I'm going to summarize real quick.
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Go ahead.
Me too.
I just wanted to make sure when we're talking about 2 and 3 stories, per your response to the comments from DRC, you indicate that the building 2 and 4 along 278 will be 2-story. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, whatever.
Because DRC had made the comment that they wanted to relocate the 1-story garage buildings closer to 278, and the response was the garages are 2 stories as well as the 2 buildings proposed on 278.
I'm assuming that's correct. I wasn't.
Okay.
And I think we can catch that at another submittal level because I have concerns about those buildings as well, but I don't think we can discuss those now. So,
Amanda, can I ask this one more? Have you given any consideration for any affordable housing?
We have not on this. We've looked at it in other places, have done it where there's incentives, frankly, where we've been able to negotiate incentives with the city or the county that wanted affordable housing. They've actually come forward and put incentives in with it. Because other than that, it doesn't work. I mean, if it worked, it'd be everywhere, right? But I think once we did look at without some type of give and take, a lot of times that's the case, but without, at Hampton Lakes, when we went back and read our RICs based on like workforce housing or the 80% above, a lot of those rents at the time, and I don't know what they are today, but I'm saying at the time we ran it, which was about a year ago, were very much in line where people with the AMI qualifications for those 2 categories.
anybody other final thoughts before I kind of give a summary? Okay, so I'm sorry, but you can't speak. You're not part of the presentation. So as far as the town's recommendations, it sounds like for us, we all kind of seem like we're in agreement with the connectivity of that road going through. And y'all correct me if I'm wrong. And then as far as the town's recommendation for the sidewalk connection, we agree with that. The dumpster, I guess, would be more of a look into the capacity and what that means.
Sufficiently sized.
Sufficient sizes.
Work with staff, yeah.
And then for the traffic impact analysis, because we're concerned, or I know that I am, about the light and the traffic with the neighboring properties across the street. I don't know if there's any way we can recommend or require them to do some other analysis to, I don't know how that works as far as.
Historically, it has to be on what's there, not what's proposed, correct?
And I'm sorry, Madam Commissioner, would you mind?
I'm concerned about the traffic now with those 800 units on the northern side of 278, plus these 270 units here, and how that is impacted. So is there a way or anything we can recommend that they have another analysis? But like he was saying, you can't really do that until there's development. So is there something else we can require that they?
I think if we require the road go through,
the issue is you're going to be conditioning actual development on potentially conceptual development, which could conceively put the applicant in a position that other applicants that come before the Planning Commission aren't subject to. Yeah. So, I mean, I understand why we do have, I guess, a relative degree of certainty about the development going in across the street. But ultimately, the conditions and the criteria that y'all have to consider are the criteria that's imposed by the UDO and the development agreement. So I guess the fourth condition that town staff has recommended, the updated traffic impact analysis for phases 2 and 3, may to some degree impact that. But
knowing that there's all these units that have already been approved on the northern part of 278, there's nothing that.
I have another question that maybe goes hand in hand with that. You can go first.
I was just going to say that we follow the DOT standards when we create these traffic impact analysis. We've had projects with the DOT where we may be designing 4 different projects all in the same area, and they won't let us. They let us look at traffic studies for different ones, but none of it matters until you submit that one plan. Like, they can't consider it until it's a real project, I guess you would say.
So my question then is, I believe that DRC had requested that you include phases 2 and 3 as part of the traffic impact analysis for phase 1. So since we're looking at approving a revised master plan, which includes phases 2 and 3, could we not ask for that to be included now, since we do know that that's your plan development, that's part of the master plan that's up for consideration?
Yeah, phases 2 and 3 are addressed in the traffic study. It discusses which portions of the road would be built in each given phase. And just to back up real quick, too, to what y'all had mentioned, I guess, I understand what you're saying with having the road built at one time, but the grocery store use where it was approved before going to 278 is a lot more traffic than what this residential use would be. Basically, phase 1 functions with just the 278 access, which is why we had the emergency access proposed. That was more for fire protection, EMS, and police. But again, we're willing to build both now. But I mean, it functions with just the 278 access.
But it's like you said before, phase 1 was more to the northern parcel versus now it's the whole length of it.
Right.
And it's like those residents at the bottom kind of would be in trouble.
Well, again, like he said, they can travel through the community and go north if they want, or the people in the north can just travel through, and if they want to go south. Like, I think it makes for, ingress and egress in both directions. I was just pointing out that the grocery anchor component is definitely a lot more traffic than the 280 residential units.
Richardson, I have a question. There's a gentleman in the audience that is a resident of the parcels to the north in Pepper Hall, that area. Is it okay that he can come up and speak real quick? Or can I not?
Ultimately, it's up to you as the chairwoman and the chair of the commission. But typically we don't allow the public to speak a second time. There's a public comment limit. There's a procedure that we follow to make sure the due process is given to every applicant. And when you open it back up for additional public comment, it can create complications and create issues down the line. Okay. If the applicant has no objection, though, and Planning Commission doesn't mind, I don't see why not.
Okay, I just didn't want to break any rules.
No, it's in your discretion, but.
Does the applicant have a problem if the resident spoke?
No, the only thing I'd say before that is, as it relates, I think your recommendation is going to be that the road for phase one would be put in, which would be 2 lanes. And I think everyone here would see that road being put in as being desirable. We're only putting 280 units in there compared to what was planned on that piece of property. It's a lot lower density, a lot less traffic impact. You know, if we do a phase 2 or 3, because we don't know what's going to go there, or if there's going to be a demand for it, frankly. I mean, it may be, and we don't know what uses. I mean, we use some kind of guess on what it should be, maybe medical office. I don't know what's going to go that's not on 278 and not on Buckwalter Parkway. We don't know. So, but whatever it's going to be, then we'd have to add another lane or another turn lanes or whatever is recommended at that time. And that's probably the way it should go. And in the meantime, you get a through fare to that traffic light, which you don't have now. So, you know, and that's what I assume your recommendation is, because that's where you're all agreeing on. So
That's where it's going, yeah.
So, yeah. So I guess all I'm saying to you is, you know, when you're looking at the overall plan and, as you said, the benefit to all in the community, you know, it seems to be not a huge impact but a greater impact on the community in a positive way to get that through. So
Bluffton is I mean, first of all, Buckwalter Place, y'all developed in there. We put the infrastructure of the roads in before you even thought about building in there.
yeah.
Bluffton's a town of connectivity. We've tried to be that way, and that's what this issue boils down to.
I
is
understand.
connectivity.
Thank you. But no, I don't have a problem.
You don't have a problem? Does the
Can I ask
commission?
one more question about the traffic study? I think you just indicated that it did include phases 2 and 3, but it actually says that SCDOT agreed that you only needed to do phase 1 now, so the current traffic study does not include phases 2 and 3. Is
I
that
don't
correct?
know what you're looking at, but
These are the comments from the DRC meeting in your cover letter dated April 28th.
well, I have the traffic study printed here, and it definitely includes phase 2 and 3.
Can we have her look at it?
Do you have it?
Sure.
Okay, hold on.
need
Richard's
to-
got to interject.
Y'all know I have to jump in
I
and
know.
speak at least every few minutes.
You really don't have to.
Yeah, I know y'all appreciate it. Anything that gets handed up to the planning commission needs to be made an official part of the record. So we're gonna need to make sure that we give that to either Jordan or Kevin or whomever.
And sir, I know I had to, unfortunately, weak bladder issue. I know you talked about affordable while I was out of the room for a minute. Do realize that is very important to town council, and I'm sure it's going to come up when y'all are there. So you might want to think through that process.
And I would just remind the commissioners, I know y'all aren't talking right now, but please do not discuss anything that's on there outside of the microphone. Just for the people watching at home.
Yeah. Well, I think the confusion is just that it's y'all's cover letter that was submitted with this application specifically says it's not included.
While you're still looking over that, does anybody have any objections of the resident to speak? The applicant is okay with it. Does the commission, are they okay with it or no?
I'm okay with it.
You're okay? Do we need a vote or anything? No? Okay. Everybody else okay on the left?
All right.
Okay, sir, if you'd like to come forward. You have 3 minutes, please. And please state your name again and your address.
Yeah, my name is Scott Crosby. I live at 12 Pepper Hall Plantation Drive. It's directly across 278 to the north of this property. I just wanted to address the safety concerns. We currently have a concrete wall median which demands that we have to pull into this the stoplight there so that we can do a U-turn and then head back west to get to our property, our driveway. And for whatever reason, there's an absurd amount of cars that are making U-turns there. which would be the entrance to this property. There's, whether they come from Baynard Park or down Hampton Parkway, because they're trying to get to 170, they have to come down and make a U-turn there. Or there's a lot of people that come from the back of the Toyota dealership and also Island West that use that stoplight. So even though there's nothing there right now, there's a lot of people that use that stoplight, making U-turns, trying to, I don't understand myself why there's so many people, because we're the only driveway between that light and 170, but it gets used a lot, and it is a huge concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just from a standpoint of making sure that our conditions are related to our criteria, I would suggest that the justification for, or the reasoning for this, the road interconnectivity through there is based off of the comprehensive plan, consistency with the comprehensive plan, which promotes the vehicular and pedestrian interconnectivity.
So would you like to go ahead and make a motion?
I'm not, I can't, maybe.
Why don't you try it?
You make me
Kathleen?
nervous. Is there anything else that we needed to discuss before?
Well, just the only things, I mean, we're looking at the 4 items. We talked about complete road, and you talked about making a justification. And also, the only other thing I would put is we recommend that the developer, as suggested, donates back to the town the, how many was it?
600.
In Buckwalter Place, 600 units?
I'm not sure. We can't do that in this meeting. I'm a little bit concerned about the nexus there. What is the nexus between this development? There's no, and they have a by right ability to put these development units here. Obviously, you're given great latitude in these recommendations to go to town council. But when there's something that is essentially, even if they're largely valueless, you're still asking them to make a concession, an abandonment of the property right on enough that is affixed to a separate property that is not being considered here today. So I've got.
See, I'm gonna disagree with you on that, Richard, because we had units that came out of Bluffton Park and went over to Buckwalter. We've had units that have gone between different developments with no tie-in to anything else. I don't think it's going to harm us to suggest to council that they look into that with the developer. I don't see where that would make anything an issue.
I would say that it's duly noted, and I'm happy to work with the town manager to contact Mr. Sen and start that discussion. But I kind of agree with Richardson that we should not make that a condition of the approval of this master plan, since those units are not associated with this plan in any way. Associated with the property owner, but it's just, I just concerns with that.
And Commissioner Leavenworth, you know, I'm only here to provide advice and opinion and legal opinions. Ultimately, the decisions are yours. Y'all make those decisions, but that is my current advice.
As I kind of explained, we don't have anywhere to go with them. I have no reason not to, except it is certainly a lot better on my behalf if I can freely donate them. Okay?
And it is just a recommendation.
And we have trust and faith in staff that when Kevin said that, I have full faith and trust that that'll.
Thank you.
That'll happen.
Okay, so.
Can I add one more comment about
Forget the last one.
Sorry.
Lydia.
Yes. So I think the issue is that during DRC, it was requested that additional intersections, like that the study scope was insufficient for the size of development when you include phases 2 and 3. So you do have it, the impact is done for phases 1, 2, and 3, but it does not include the scope that was deemed what would be sufficient for the entirety of the master plan development per SCDOT. So I guess one question would just be, if we aren't able to take into consideration future development by other developers, can we not take into consideration future development that's part of this master plan approval, which would necessitate a more extensive traffic study?
I don't think we know what's going to go there. I mean, it could be a restaurant, it could be an office.
Yeah.
And what's the assumption for
I think that's the intent, is that as those spaces are coming online, we can then assess, because as Mr. Sen stated, I don't think that they really know. It could be a daycare, it could be an office, it could be a restaurant, and they all have different categories of uses in the sense of trips generated for each one of them. So, and then having just different, necessary requirements. I think the biggest issue is, one, the connectivity. So you're connecting from 278 to the Hampton Parkway. that gives you access to a full intersection as opposed to the current configuration of a right-in, right-out only, where the Hampton Parkway comes out on 278. So you're making that improvement, which from an accessibility standpoint now, people no longer will have to make that right then a U-turn to get back around.
I guess my only comment was if we weren't doing the entirety of that connection, then I would prefer that we included a traffic study for the entirety of the development. But if we're going all the way through, I don't have concerns.
But based on your discussion, that's what your recommendation is going to be.
This brings up another question. That traffic impact analysis was done by Thomas and Hutton, correct?
Correct.
So, which is also doing the master plan. I'm wondering, and this is maybe a staff or Richardson question.
Third party?
Correct. Can we make a condition that the traffic impact analysis is done by a third party?
That question's never been asked before to me, and at least to the best of my knowledge. Yeah, and so let me think on that for a moment. Typically, I mean, here are my initial thoughts.
Yeah.
The traffic impact analysis, the engineering, the land planning are all contracted out by the developer, the applicant. Mm-hmm. And we give a lot of latitude to the applicant to choose whomever they want to provide those services, and it ultimately comes down to a credibility analysis on your end as to whether you think that the analysis done is credible in light of the fact that the engineers and the land planners are doing it. Again, I don't know for a fact that you can't do that, but I would be hesitant to get into that process of requiring different groups to provide different analysis or even for a traffic impact analysis. But we'll see if Kevin has other ideas or other comments.
Prior to the town council meeting, what we can do is we can have an independent traffic engineer review. Okay. Just do an assessment of their document.
Yeah.
And then we can have that presented at town council.
Does that verbiage?
They're not doing a traffic impact analysis. They're just reviewing
the integrity of that document.
Yes,
Sure.
On a staff level, we can contract that.
Would that need to be a part of the motion?
I'd trust staff to do it. I wouldn't muddy it up.
We should probably recommend that staff do that.
Make that recommendation, and that's something the staff is going to work on prior to the meeting.
I think that y'all directed staff. I think that they know now what y'all want, so it does not have to be included in the motion. And you can trust staff that they'll follow through on that.
And if I could just share real quick before, two thoughts on this. Having been involved with the town in various capacities since 2005, I've run across Thomas and Hutton and other traffic impact, and I have the utmost trust in what was done and that you will keep it. And I understand the question.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Telling commissioners that's my personal interaction and feeling on it. And number two, even if there was an issue here, if the applicant is willing to and council makes it a requirement that road pops all the way through, that combined with the change in use from commercial to residential eases anything in my mind as far as the need for that.
Agreed.
So just a couple of thoughts.
Yes, and I understand kind of why you made the comment. I was just going to say that I'm not a traffic engineer. We have a separate department that does that, but we have been in business 75 years, and our reputation's everything, so we wouldn't falsify it.
That's fine. Intended to call Thomas and Hutton into a question of integrity.
Sure.
I think for me it's more of a perception, because I think while many of us in this room have a relationship with Thomas and Hutton and do know the quality of work that is performed, I think that there's a general public that isn't necessarily involved, and I wouldn't want them looking at this going, raising any questions that are just not necessary. And I think, like Kevin said, having an independent consultant just overlook that, I think that would help. If I was a private citizen who didn't have any knowledge of you, it would put my mind more at ease about that.
Okay, is everybody ready? Can someone make a motion? Kathleen.
I make a motion that Planning Commission recommends approval with
It's a recommendation to.
Yes, isn't that what I said?
Okay.
It's not.
Sorry, I was thinking you were.
You did.
Okay.
Sorry.
A recommendation for approval with conditions. I'm just me. Of the. I want to make sure I call it by the right name. For the Headwaters of Bluffton Master Plan Amendment, the conditions being that per staff recommendations, with a note that specific to that second dumpster location, that there is a further study in discussion associated with the capacity of the compactor that's being proposed and the potential need for that second dumpster. And additionally, that just want to make sure I'm using my words right. That based off of Section 3.9.3.b, to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, that the through road that is shown north-south connecting through the property is also provided as a part of the Phase 1 installation, and that a fence is added on the southern buffer between, along that southern buffer, adjacent to the adjacent homes specifically.
Second.
Any discussion? I have something. You didn't mention the sidewalk.
The sidewalk was one of the conditions of the town, correct?
Yeah, but did you state it?
I stated that the conditions that were as proposed by the staff.
That's just an all-encompassing.
That was the first comment.
I just clarified the third comment about this, or yes, about the.
Okay, so everything that the staff has plus. Okay.
Making the road all the way through and changing the dumpster.
Looking at the dumpster, adding the road, and adding the fence. Yeah.
Okay, so because number 1 would be the one that's modified.
I'm sorry?
Number 1 would have been the one that's not modified.
Madam Chair, if I may, the motion made was to recommend approval with conditions. Those conditions being the conditions recommended by staff in the staff report for the reasons set forth in the staff report, plus a modification of condition number 3 that had to deal with further discussion between staff and the applicant of capacity and necessity of a second dumpster versus the proposed compactor system recommended by the applicant. And then an additional condition of the through road being constructed in accordance with the interconnectivity recommendations of the comprehensive plan, which is consistent, which is a modification of condition number 1.
That's what I was
thinking.
It's not necessarily just a modification of number 1.
It's an addition to.
It is a furtherance of number 1, which is a recommendation that gravel not be permitted and that be the full access.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear because well, she said the fence.
And the final one.
Okay. All in favor? No, I'm sorry, we're in the middle of a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Thank you, everyone. Is there any further discussion? Kevin?
No, ma'am.
Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.